In the history of humanity, there are people who overturn the existing order of things, change the world, and leave their mark in the hearts of generations. The hero of today's story is a young man who was born into a modest farming family. He took his destiny into his own hands and set out in search of meaning and his place in the vast world. The hero's name is Henry Ford. Henry was born in 1863 to William and Mary Ford, who owned a thriving farm in Dearborn, Michigan, USA at the time. At the age of 16, he left for the nearby city of Detroit, where he began training as a machinist. 3 years later, he returned to Dearborn and continued working on the family farm. Additionally, Henry occasionally serviced steam engines and worked part-time at various factories. In 1888, Henry married Clara Bryant, who had grown up on a neighboring farm. After a few years, in 1891, Henry decided to return to Detroit with Clara, where he was hired as an engineer at the Edison Illuminating Company. Advancing quickly in his career, within 2 years he became the chief engineer. Around the same time, Clara gave birth to their only son, Edsel Bryant Ford. As a chief engineer, Ford spent his working hours attempting to realize his dream. He wanted to build a bold and revolutionary horseless carriage powered by gasoline. All his efforts were focused on creating a true marvel on wheels. And in 1896, he completed work on the so-called quadricycle, which consisted of a lightweight metal frame equipped with 4 bicycle wheels driven by a 4-cylinder, 4-horsepower gasoline engine. In 1903, Henry founded the Ford Motor Company, where the first Ford automobile, the Model A, with 2 cylinders and 8 horsepower, was later assembled. At that time, only a few cars were manually assembled daily by a group of 2 or 3 workers using parts ordered from other companies. However, despite the considerable success of the Model A, Henry Ford dreamed of creating an even more affordable and reliable car. And in October 1908, his dream became a reality. The result of his efforts was an automobile called the Model T, which people later nicknamed Tin Lizzie. The Model T immediately became a success, and soon Ford had far more orders than the company could fulfill. As a result, Ford implemented practical methods of mass production that revolutionized the American industry, including the use of large-scale manufacturing plants, standardized interchangeable parts, and moving assembly line. Mass production significantly reduced the time required to build a car, allowing for low costs. In 1914, Ford also increased the daily wage of his workers to $5 for an 8-hour workday, compared to $2.34 for a 9-hour day, setting a standard for the industry. In 1990, Ford appointed his son Edsel as the president of Ford Motor Company, but retained full control over the company's operations. By that time, the company had produced 15 million Model Ts, and Ford Motor Company became the largest automobile manufacturer in the world. However, by 1936, the company had dropped to the 3rd position in sales in the automotive industry. In 1943, Henry's son Edsel passed away. Henry briefly returned to the position of president at Ford Motor Company, and in 1945, he handed it over to his grandson, Henry Ford II. 2 years later, Henry Ford passed away at his home in Dearborn at the age of 83. Henry Ford was the embodiment of the American dream. His life was a shining example of how one person with unwavering faith and tireless diligence can change the world. He not only created cars for mass production, but also transformed our way of life, paving the way for a new era. His passion for innovation, pursuit of excellence, and social responsibility continue to inspire many people to this day.